This is ELBC 99.9 FM. Today is the 30th day in the month of October 2018. I'm Daniel Ankrah alongside my colleague Algerim Chidejunian. And together we're here with you sharing breakfast up until 10 o'clock. The Minister of Finance and Development Planning, Minister Samuel Toure, is here. He's joined us this morning on the platform. And like we announced, we've been announcing since yesterday, the Minister is here. We're talking about the Pro-Poor Agenda for Prosperity and Development. This presentation is being relayed on several community radio stations across the country, also being relayed on Joy FM, Prime FM, and OK FM in the capital, Monrovia. And thank you for joining us. For those of you following us wherever you are, you can follow us wherever you are in the world at elbcradio.com. Senator Dagosa tells me he's following from India. You can also follow us at LNTV Liberia Live on Facebook, and we're also live on Facebook. You can follow us at LNTV Liberia Live, and we'll bring it all to you as it happens. Minister Toure, good morning. How are you?
Thank you. Good morning to all, and good morning to all our great people in Radio Land. It's been some time since last year.
I've been meaning to ask you, what's driving you? What's that driving force behind whenever you're talking with so much energy, when you move in so much dedication to the work? What's the driving force?
I think because certain members, we in our generation sat on the sidelines for too long. We had too many opinions about how to change the country. When we were in school at the University of Liberia, when we were in college, and we went to graduate, endless debates about the right framework, and to be given that opportunity by His Excellency. It's like it can never go wrong. So I'm driven by the fact that when I was not in government, I held other people accountable. I held other people feet to the fire to produce transformation. And now that I'm given that chance by God and by the President, I have to drive myself to succeed.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Our conversation today focuses on the Pro-Poor Agenda for Prosperity and Development. To begin with, I'd like you to give us a background of the plan.
Well, again, let me say a big thank you to the President for achieving in record time the launch of the Pro-Poor Agenda for Prosperity and Development. Drafting of this plan began in earnest in March of this year, and he was able to launch. We're doing the final things for publication. But the blueprint is very clear. The background is that the Liberian economy has been facing serious macroeconomic headwinds. And let's be clear, macroeconomic cycles do happen all over the world. It's unfortunate that in our case here, the fundamental structure of our economy lends itself to acute volatility, so that we were able to face more shocks because of the structure of the undiversified nature of the economy, because of inflows into our economy that are not related to the fundamental structure. So you have unmilled, you have all of these monies that have been coming here, giving us a false sense of assurance that we're running a robust economy or robust growth. So with that kind of headwind, a lot of the gains that would have been made in the last 6 to 12 years, had the shocks that happened, were evaporated. And the plan did discuss that we were on a path to meeting the Millennium Development Goals. We did, if you look at the statistics to show poverty levels did decline between 2007 and 2014. I have the World Bank latest stats on that. But the shocks may have reversed some of those gains. So you're coming on the backdrop of tremendous pressure and the slowing down leading to election, all of those lagged effect on top of a dual currency regime which can amplify those kinds of pressures. Our neighboring countries don't have to worry about the fact that they're running a dual currency regime. We have to worry about that in addition to worry about inflation, commodity prices, global price movement. So this plan, situated at this critical juncture, it's important for several reasons. That provides the blueprint for getting out of this downturn, for really providing the means for getting Liberians, a fraction of Liberians, out of poverty. Now the plan says we want to move 1 million people out of poverty. This does not mean making 1 million people rich. So there's a lot of confusion when you people, and this is a lot of technical things, and a layperson is not an economist. So when you say move people out of poverty, you say you're just giving them an income at the poverty line. So we say $1.90 per day if somebody was able to earn $1.90, they would technically be on the international poverty line. All right, so something like the poverty line in Liberia, and that would translate into around $690 per year. So if a good fraction of the population earn that, we will be able, looking at the analysis through the poverty gap. I don't want to get too technical.
Coming to, Minister, coming to Pillar 1, the Proper Agenda for Prosperity and Development, has it taken into consideration other plans that were existing as government is continuing with Vision 2030 and other plans that were existing? Did it take into consideration some of these plans?
Yes, I think this is the first time that we took into consideration all of the things that have happened in the past. Our administration is not ignoring the fact that there was a previous administration, that there were development plans. As a matter of fact, we still believe we're moving toward Vision 2030, which was articulated in Banga under the last president. So we see the PAPD as another series of a plan in the next 5 years. So the agenda for transformation came. Unfortunately, that agenda was aborted sometime because of Ebola, and then they recast something else. So we now have this plan to continue that march toward middle-income country status. So we don't see ourselves as, we learned a lot from the agenda for transformation. I costed the agenda I led a team that costed that, so I have a lot of experience with the whole agenda. And folks in the Ministry of Finance today have a lot of experience. So we're able to, some of the consultants work on that, so they're able to translate that experience, and this is why they're in a much better position to protect this plan and protect it from the vulnerabilities and the shocks that affected the agenda for transformation. But yes, we benefited from hindsight considerably.
Pillar 1 says power to the people, and I'd like you to be a bit more specific, Minister, as we go through the pillars.
Power to the people is just the ultimate that we're all being fighting for. How do you give pauperized, marginalized, dispossessed people the ultimate power to exert control over their lives? You know, that means strengthening their educational capacity, giving them the skills to find jobs in the competitive marketplace. That means giving them better access to health, you know, so that when medical doctors or practitioners treat them, they can survive ailments and go on to lead healthier lives. How do you empower people so that they make decisions ultimately that benefit the country? So when citizens are healthy, when they are well informed, when they are well educated, and when they can find meaningful jobs with good wages, they have power. They have power to run the democracy. They have power to run their lives. They have power to play a more meaningful role in the society. That is the logic of the message behind power to the people. So by that, we want to protect vulnerable people, vulnerable girls who are being abused in school, who are dropping out of school because of early teenage pregnancy. How do we protect them? Because when a girl is pregnant in school, she drops out, she's destined for a path of poverty.
Sure.
So how do you protect her from that? So the vulnerable, marginalized youth who were abused during the war, many of them, you see them in the streets, other people in the rural areas who have a sense of, where am I? Which country is this? How do you make sense? How do you give them a sense that they too belong to Liberia? Through maybe programs like social protection, direct cash transfers, more targeted than we've seen, more skilled up as called for in the plan. So that's the whole, how do you give youth development a new impetus, and you raise it to the new level. Young people are so vulnerable. A lot of them are unemployed. They're employed in vulnerable sectors. How do you protect how do you prevent the vulnerability in those sectors? How do you mainstream those sectors in the formal sectors so that there's more certainty to their earnings? I think it's a whole panoply of these protections that we weave into the cocoon we now call power to the people, protecting the mass of Liberians.
So, I mean, having addressed, the thematic areas of the fresh pillar, the agenda is something that concerns citizens. We're all looking forward to, and it set the basis upon which the real-led administration, would be guided. What makes the timing right?
Well, the timing is right first because you have a new administration. You've had a plan that terminated the agenda for transformation, and all that termination is happening at the time we're crashing, we're in great recession, and then you have a new president with a new momentum. There is nobody in this country has a better chance to change Liberia than George Manawia. And the reason I say so is because George Manawia comes from the streets. Yesterday at the youth program, representative from Solomon George from described the president as a Zogo. I mean, if the president, we thought that and said, well, you are the father of Zogo, because he was describing how the president used to go on dump piles and collect food and bottles. Now, to move from collecting piles of garbage and finding food on the dump pile to the president of a country, you have the moral wherewithal. You know, you have the social capital, the moral capital to command the respect of poor people that you will do for them because you understand best their circumstances. That alone, the sheer monstrosity of the political will that the man can summon because of that, will enable him to achieve great things that even were not possible under other administrations. And you've already seen some of that. This is a man who in 3 months sent 15 doctors. Yesterday I was honored by the Liberia College of Physicians and Surgeons. They had their second graduation of specialists, and I was a guest speaker there, and they said, Mr. Minister, please convey to the President that this is unprecedented, that you just sent in 3 months of taking office 15 medical doctors, specialists for advanced training, and you did that with 300,000, and they challenged the President to a bet that if you gave us another 500,000, Mr. Minister, Mr. President, I tell you, we will use that mold to empower Liberian practitioners in the healthcare sector. And I responded that the President will take him on the bet, will increase the allocation, and we will even send some of our specialists outside. This is a President who has mobilized capital, 1 million sitting in the bank now to find its way to small businesses. We've been taking some time to structure that program because of the difficulties. You don't want to give the sense that you're putting money out there for people to misuse, so it has to be well ordered, well structured. Their cost. He made a recent announcement saying public education is free, and people are worrying about the cost. The question is, why when he took on the 11 million, people weren't saying, how are you going to pay for it? He's taken that on, and he's paid that for some time now, and so they're worrying about maybe 3 million annually or 4 million annually. It's all politics. But as I said to the graduates yesterday, we have to minimize the politics. This is our country.
Now, Minister, let me bring you to the economy, and this is very key because the economy drives everything. What's in the agenda towards the economy? There have been a couple of steps taken already by this government in terms of short-term measures to help the economy grow. But what are the medium and long term for the economy? Where do we stand?
Well,
realistic plans.
The medium term is all about ensuring that the private sector takes off.
How?
Sustained investment in infrastructure, number one. For an economy to attain sustained growth of 4 to 5%, you have to have a minimum of critical infrastructure. You have to have electricity. One of the things that is hurting this economy is that the electricity situation is still challenged. The road situation is still challenged. So the plan looks at investing in an addition, building a minimum of 800 kilometers of roads. The plan looks at special economic zones that would attract capital and be giving good incentives to do light manufacturing, to do value addition in agriculture. We do not want to depend on just the export of our raw materials. We need to diversify our export basket. It can't just be iron ore and raw, but we need to we have oil palm, for example. There were all of the investments that happened in the last 12 years, regrettably have not materialized because, for example, we've not given some of the concessionaires the land that they needed to plant more so that they can hire more people and support growth. So what's happening is that we need to complete some of the investment that was made in the last 12 years while giving room for new investments. We have investors coming in now who are exploring possibilities in the agriculture sector of growing rice locally. We just completed a preliminary feasibility with a Chinese firm. We have investors coming in to explore light manufacturing and solar batteries and things like that. All of these investments will create jobs, and they are the kinds of investments we want that are not linked to our natural resource sector. So I think the short term, the long term, the medium term has to be private sector-led growth, meaning people have to add jobs in the economy that are not tied to government employment. When I leave here...
That is by means of attracting attracting investment.
attracting new investments.
But Minister, there are current issues like now we have issues with gas shortage. I mean, fake gas shortage. I should put it that way because there are such issues. Even though the government has said it's fake, but people still finding it difficult to get gasoline. So these things are things that hamper the movement of people. And if people cannot move about, certainly they cannot fend for themselves.
Well, to the credit of the
Just the
president,
underlining,
yeah, to the credit of the president, the gas prices are rising globally. Okay, we're the only country that have kept the prices low, and because of poor reason. Let's be honest, we can't sustain that. So we're keeping the price low at the point where if you are in the gas business, you're not going to make profit because we want to protect the poor. There is a limit to how much we can hold against market forces. Okay. So what you're going to see quite recently is a moderate jump in the price because before all of this shock, Liberia has the lowest fuel price in the West African sub-region. I live in Cote d'Ivoire. I've traveled to Ghana. And all of these places, Sierra Leone, they have very high prices. We've benefited from low prices. So it's going to be economically impossible when the global price is already rising and when you're already low, you're trying to keep it. That means that the people who are in the industry cannot, so they've been negotiating with the government about reducing taxes to keep prices low. I put it out there to the Liberian people. Can we give them $10 million in tax break or $7 million just to keep the price down? I say no. Let's get that $7 million and put it in investing in quality education at the University of Liberia. Let's do that to pay for tuition that is now free, so that we all give and take while we work our way out of this difficult situation. This thing is no making of one person. It's the fundamental weakness of our economy. So we can't put it on anybody. Okay, it's just the way our economy has been. When we change it over the next 5 years, over the next year, the people who will be in government at that time will be enjoying. But President Weah would have done the heavy lifting because he would have altered the balance of forces in the economy.
Does the plan provide projections for job creation? And I will sometimes reference the past government. There are projections, not necessarily for you to comment on, but to tell us if this government has got projections within the pro-poor agenda in terms of jobs to create.
For sure. Well, the big projections that we want to let 1 million people out of poverty. I mean, that is the major number that we're going to be monitoring because
within the 5 years.
In the 5 years, that's a big thing. So how do we get these people at a poverty line? So it's not eliminating extreme poverty. It's just moving 1 million people. So 50.9% of the Liberian population live below the poverty line. So if the poverty line is $1.90 US dollar a day in PPP terms, we use that to compare Liberia with other countries. Then that means that you have a population of 4.6 divided by 2. Half of that is poor. So the plan says we don't want to move the 2.5 million or the 2.2 million who are poor, being poor out of poverty. It says we want to move half of that number. So effectively, we're talking about 1 million. And when you do some rough calculations with a growth rate of around, if growth goes to anywhere from 3% to 4% to 5%, it's doable because every time you grow, you grow GDP, you grow annual income and new net income to the economy. So what is needed to close the poverty gap, it's around maybe 250 to 300 million per year. You can get that from sustained growth. And again, that's the big thing. Growth has to happen. And not only does the growth have to happen, the growth has to be pro-poor in the sense that you are dividing the benefits of that growth to affect marginalized and poor people. Cash transfers have to be well targeted to the poor, or else you can have the growth and still not lift people out of poverty. So there will be a number of new jobs. So this is the broad brush plan. A lot of economic analysis is going to follow the plan to drill down the technicality of the numbers. You can impose all the technicality in an overarching plan. So the analysts, Minister of Finance, consultants, Minister of State, other technicians will come in and they will work out numbers and moving to see how one thing I can say, we will follow this plan closely that I think the AFT was followed. We will try to implement this plan in a more targeted way, quarter by quarter reports, getting stakeholders around the table to see how far we're doing in specific indicators, where we're falling. So it's going to be, we're benefiting a lot from the last 12 years in terms of upping the ante and how we deliver for our marginalized people. So it's going to be better.
Beautiful. Now, you kept using pro poor, pro poor. For the benefit of those who are, listening, how would you, because many people have had this word misconstrued. We don't really understand exactly what the word pro poor is, if you may. Could you just explain before we take our next question?
Well, pro-poor, let's get it clear. Pro-poor is not a newly invented word in Liberia. It's a word in the economic parlance. When you say pro-poor, it means that economic growth must benefit the poor people. It makes sense to talk about growth only when the poor benefit. So if a country grows at 10% and the rate of poverty and 50% of the people are still in poverty, many economists discount that kind of growth. They don't want to talk about it because it seems the growth is clustered only around the wealthy and the well-to-do. So pro-poor means that you're taking the benefits and the gains of a private investment of growth and directing it to poor people who have lower skills. Maybe you're investing in getting their skills up so that they can sustainably find income. That's the definition. But the word has also taken on some humorous twist, which is like, okay, in the 1980s, I think we had this Green Revolution, right? Yeah, Tobel had, what is it called? Mattresses or higher heights. President Weah is pro-poor. President not Tubman, but Taylor was, is that Vision 2020 or something? Every president, so this pro-poor is associated with the president now because it's aptly suitable. This is a poor guy who came from the slums and the ghettos and is now the president of the country. So the appellation of pro-poor around him is just fitting. It's a fitting
revenue generation, Minister, revenue generation is quite key to all of this. In as much as we've got a lot of international partners knocking on our doors and we're reaching out to them, but generating revenue locally or domestically to ensure that a lot can happen directly from the government, public education, especially at UL and other free wax fees as well. Now health workers all coming on. What is the strength of the government now to generate more revenue?
Yes, that's a good question because everything we do will have to depend on our ability to generate revenue from our domestic sources. Aid flows have declined, and so we can't continue to depend on aid. It's not a good thing at all to depend on aid. Aid should help you grow, but let that aid help you, strengthen your revenue capabilities. So that's why we launched, along with the PAPD, the new Domestic Resource Mobilization Strategy under the LRA. This is a strategy that is a comprehensive plan that tells us how we should proceed to raise more revenue. It has an ambition of $1 billion over the next 5 years, and that's an ambition. Some pessimists will say, look, $1 billion is too much. If you guys are able to raise $600 million of new money over the next 5 years, you're doing great. The LRA Commissioner General and his folks tell me, Mr. Minister, we are able to push to $1 billion if the government makes, number one, the necessary investment, and they need around $78 million to move to the frontier of technology, to do all the different changes that are required, the big push to get this money. They also need, besides money, they need political will, and they have that in copious supply in President Weah, as already demonstrated. So that means that some of the exemptions and the tax expenditures that ran through in the last 12 years will have to be curtailed. Now, exemptions are good if they are targeted and if they are tailored to job creation. They are bad if you cannot trace their impact in the economy. So the president is committed to working with the LRA and the Ministry of Finance to ensure that when we exempt, it can be traced to an impact in job creation or to an investment that is sustainable, that is impactful. So those are the kind of changes, moving towards a payment system, towards a digital economy. How do we cut transaction costs? How do we improve efficiency by paying taxes online, by doing the whole moving to e-government? All of these have positive revenue. So the plan is a blueprint for how you grow your revenue year in year. And we have ample examples across Africa. Rwanda, we share our experiences in the 90s. They had a brutal genocide. They've been able to, through their revenue authority, generate enormous flows of revenue domestically to the extent that aid flows have declined. If you look at official development assistance to Nigeria, is ranked high in terms of the inflows that have come. Now, inflows are good if you're able to turn it around. That's one of the bad things of the last 12 years. There were lots of inflows we were not able to turn those inflows around to either sustain the private sector or prepare for the day when the flows would decline. Yes, we had shocks, and I want to say a thing or two about shock. What the Ebola shock did is expose the fundamental weakness of our economy. So we ballyhoo the Ebola thing around all the time. We bandy it around, we talk about it, but it's the fundamental thing is that the economy was weak. If Ebola had stricken Cote d'Ivoire, after 6 months, the Cote d'Ivoire economy would rebound because the private sector is deeper and more structured in Cote d'Ivoire than it is in Liberia. So we need to then move our private sector to the level where it is resilient to economic shocks, and this is a conversation we're having with all of our partners who've been enormously generous. The World Bank, the African Development Bank, the European Union, AU, all of our partners, ECOWAS, how we're in this together. If we are here over the next 5 years, we need to turn the private sector around and make Liberia a more livable, peaceful place. This is the commitment that we're forging under the new plan.
Yeah,
So let me hammer on recommendations in creating a robust economy that will go a long way, to affect the livelihoods of the citizens here in this country. What would you recommend in terms of protecting investors and, of course, we the citizens?
I mean, well, the first thing is we need to change the business climate. Obviously, Liberia has to be seen as a place where capital works. When I leave here, we're going to do a business climate meeting. The president set up a business climate working group that is having its first meeting in the next hour or so, the Minister of Finance. So the idea is to identify how is it that we can make this place attractive for registering a business, for doing a business. When businesses go to court, how is it that they can get results fast, rather than have the case linger in court for months and months with uncertainty about the investment. So those are the challenges that we face, and we used to be better than where we are now in the doing business ranking, brought up by the World Bank. We're around 172 out of 190 countries. We were 150 before, and so we declined. But we can go back. There are quick gains that we're there. So the big thing is that the president declared Liberia open for business, and when you look at the ratio that defines openness, Liberia is indeed open. They add the exports to the imports, and they do that over GDP. Liberia, when you compare that to Rwanda, all the other countries, shows Liberia is more open. I think we need to leverage this more open. We've been open since Topman declared the open door policy. Our problem is that we do not leverage what that openness means for our own Liberian businesses, for our own people. I think we just let other people do stuff and we're happy. We need to change that, and that change is beginning. Some of it started in the last 5 or so years. We just want to move it to the new level of governance and results.
Minister, does this plan carry, domestically, does it carry in terms of dollars and cents what it would take to make most of what is into this plan into actual works?
Yeah, I think, it's near $5 billion, the whole cost of the plan. On the net of it, I think the resource gap that we actually need if new money is coming in could range between 1.5. I mean, I'm being careful with the numbers here, but but between 1.5 billion in that neighborhood of fresh new injections. Okay, so to get that, some of that may be covered by PPPs, for example. The benefit of PPP, and we have one PPP through an APM terminal. And we don't have a PPP framework. So what this plan is asking is to structure a framework so that you get the best out of your PPPs. There have been a lot of cries about the PPP with APM terminal. The thing about these things is that when investors sink their money in them, they rate the country. Other investors are looking to see how you treat the investor who's already there. So you want to be careful so that investor doesn't tell the other people in New York and Wall Street and Brussels, other places that, oh no, the investment in Liberia is not working because we're facing, so we have to balance that. So there's a lot of pro-po we want to do, but we also want to balance pro-po against, the fundamentals of international finance and credibility and rating. So we need to attract more PPPs, and the way the APM terminal story will be told will attract how new people will come and invest in other PPPs, because that means we don't have to take money from the budget, we don't have to credit money or borrow money to finance these roads. PPPs in roads will be good. I mean, they pay for themselves, and when we use them to spur growth.
Most economies, especially in Africa, West Africa, we've seen, aside from depending on natural resources, they have agriculture has also been a major route. In terms of the priorities of the plan, how does it, get in a way that is into agriculture and we promoting agriculture? Because once we can feed ourselves, food security is a big issue.
Agriculture is a major priority on the plan. The plan is, we're building the logic in the plan such that nothing stands alone.
Okay.
Road infrastructure is not a road to nowhere. In other words, roads have to pay for themselves through economic rates of return. If you build a road, you have to ensure you have agriculture investments that are leveraging that road. So we are linking our road strategy with our agricultural development strategy, with our human capital development strategy. When roads are bad, good teachers do not locate to Grand Cru because they fear they could get trapped in there. So one of the reasons you may not be able to attract talented teachers from Monrovia is because you have bad. Healthcare as well. Doctors may not want to locate in difficult to access places because of road challenges. So we're building the nexus of infrastructure, human capital, agricultural productivity into the plan so that the social and economic rates of return that emerge from the plan is better than we saw in the last 5 years under the EFT. But agriculture is key. What we want to do with agriculture, our vision is not just this small rice. We want to solve the rice problem. So we're looking at a big off-taker in the sector. Just like we have a big off-taker in rubber, Firestone, we need a big off-taker in rice who can grow rice. There are debates about the competitiveness of the Liberian economy for rice, and we lean on the side that we can grow rice for domestic consumption and for export. So we're moving in that direction while working with our small scale holders to build up the capacity. So there will be investments through the Ministry of Agriculture, with extension services, technology, to build the capacity of local farmers. So I think the whole farming space will have more visibility than we saw. Once the financing flows are well defined under the plan, you're going to see agriculture take a new role. And crops like cash crops like cocoa need to resume. Coffee, we used to do better in those spaces. Rubber is particularly challenged also now because of the challenge facing Firestone, some of our smallholders who are exporting impurities. So we're looking at investments in the private sector to help them fetch better prices, more competitive prices on the market, so they can add value. They can add value to their products. So all of this stuff is going to happen in the agriculture space. In the forestry space, also we're looking at that space has been challenged, but we're taking a new look at how we can really add value into the sector. Wood, timber, rubber, wood, all these possibilities are lining up for our people. These are quite challenging but both exciting times.
Okay, so if you're just coming our way, this is a reminder that you follow the ELBC and you follow the Super Morning Show Live. For those of you following us via LNTV Liberia Live on Facebook, you also can listen wherever you are at elbcradio.com. This program is live on several media outlets. Radio Live in Zozo, I understand, is also, the faculty is also following this. Voice of People in Maryland is also carrying this presentation live. OK FM, Prime FM, Joy FM, they all carrying this presentation live. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us. The Minister of Finance and Development Planning is our guest on the show. Minister, corruption is what can undermine any plan, regardless of how good that plan is. What is the will, the political will, to calm down on corruption and ensuring transparency within the public sector?
Well, definitely, the president has demonstrated his commitment to fighting corruption. One of the things, the challenges are, okay, do you look back at going after the old stuff? There are cries that you go back at knockout audit. I can tell you right now, the president is looking at all the summaries of knockout audits, what's happened in that sector. The view we have is that, look, if you prevented corruption under your administration through the steps that we are taking, one of the ways is that we make sure a good share of the public money is going into things that you can't easily take from. So if you put more health workers on the payroll, you cut salary, you do all of that, it grows the budget, and then it's a way of saying the money is not even available for somebody to even misuse. So that's a big thing that you want to think about in the fight against corruption. The other thing is that the whole public financial management way, how do you restructure the budget and how do you make it more pro-poor? I can tell you right now, we're tinkering with the idea of going toward a zero-based budget. I have the belief, and I can be backed by that, that the budget we currently run is is still not optimal. So we didn't have the time to do the proper cleaning because we're a new government and we met an old structure. So there's something called historical budget. In the last 12 years, things have been piling. And new government should take the time and draw a new line, wipe up some of the things, and ensure that every dollar of public spending is going to something that we can put our hand on, we can measure. That will generate additional money for investment. The president is committed to supporting integrity institutions. Okay, we're having an integrity meeting very soon to look at all of the other reports and rationalize what we're going to do about them. This is going to be part of our MCC eligibility work. So we're looking at more transparency in how the government reports its fiscal data. Okay. All spending in the economy, spending going to health sector, need to be better accounted for to our partners. This is how you show greater transparency. We're not afraid to be transparent. I've instructed the people at Ministry of Finance that we need to change the finance website and make sure you citizens out there can go at the Ministry of Finance and say, I want to see how the government is fighting malaria. And then all the malaria data populates for you in a reader-friendly, user-friendly format. We're talking to technicians who can make that available. We will make data transparent so that people see the impact, the monies we receive, and the impact they're having out there on the Liberian people. Those are all the transparencies. And look, for example, we have to continue to pass the fighting corruption indicator, all right? The next MCC eligibility scorecard will soon be out. Preliminarily, we did pass. I mean, that's data coming from the last, I think, 2 years or so. We did pass the corruption, but it shows we are challenging a lot of other areas. We have established a working group on eligibility to reverse this. This means that we need to be transparent. Everybody needs to be credible. If the internal audit agency and the auditors are recommending something, we need to show that we have inculcated their recommendation into a policy framework and prevent the weakness that led to the recommendation. So all of those we track. So as part of my work, I'm maintaining a special metrics on how we're doing on corruption, because if we don't pass the corruption, so the public needs to understand a little bit more. And let me say this. We instructed the Controller and Accountant General and folks at the Ministry of Finance to do a little bit more education to the public about how government works. The recent experience have told me that people have not appreciated some of the gains that we have made in the public financial management space. So there are all these rumors about how the Ministry of Finance, for example, I can't get more than 7 days of Padan. And I ask why, because that's the travel ordinance. So even me. So paper trails are jealously guarded by auditors. It's not just easy to just go wrong, you know. So we've improved in that sense. The multilateral loans are approved by boards of, you know, European Union, the African Development Bank, and the World Bank. And after those approvals, you know, these things are signed, and then you have to disperse. So it means that the disbursement happens over time. Mm-hmm. It's not just an immediate cash that comes in the economy. So there are triggers that have to be met. First, they say we have to be transparent. We have to report this on time. We have to meet certain triggers even before you get the budget support, before you get some of these things. So they are all tied to that. Once they begin that, and then once the thing is released, then it goes to a project implementing unit. Money is disbursed to contractors. Procurement, again, procurement has to happen. Sometimes this procurement can take 6 months, 1 year. So you could sign something today, and effective program implementation can begin almost 18 months later. This is one of the changes we're proposing. President Weah has proposed, because he had this experience with a partner project coming, a fixed amount of 10 million. We wanted to do it for 5 years. President said, if I spend 10 million over 5 years, I'm going for election back in 5 years. You know, I can tell the Liberian people that I had to do procurement for 3 years, so the project would not finish, so we finish in 5. So he has brought an extraordinary pace, and even the partners have respected and recognized that this president wants to change the way the multilateral system went, wants to push them a little further, building on the experience of the last 12 years. Look how long it took us to deliver the Mancoffin Hydro. And even after delivering the Mancoffin Hydro, today we still cannot use that hydro to the fullest extent.
Minister, empowering Liberian businesses is key, and how does the government intend to empower and create more jobs? Because once you empower Liberian businesses, the overriding effect is that, you know, they too will be able to empower more Liberians, and more Liberians can empower more Liberians.
I think there are tremendous opportunities for Liberian businesses. There are laws that are favoring Liberian businesses. I've advised the president that it may not be good to, right now with this situation we face in the economy, we need to exploit the opportunities that Liberians have and provide support for them. But I don't think we need to do so at the expense of foreign capital that's coming, because we don't have the capacity yet to sustain. So I think we need to protect. So laws like special laws giving Liberian privileges are not necessary, because these things send signals to investors out there that Liberia is not a friendly place, and they contradict the president's open door policy when he said Liberia is open for business. Bring your money here so that it can work for the Liberian people. So we Liberian businesses and our foreign partners should be in a joint partnership that works towards strengthening Liberian capability. And there are ways this can work. For example, if we have a road contract and the best person to do that contract is a German firm. Always like to use the example of a German firm. It's a German firm, then obviously we can say, let this Liberian firm partner with this German firm so that the skills from the German firm can rub on the Liberian firm over a time. They can even send experts from here, there in Germany to learn the ropes. It is that kind of partnership in the procurement process that transfers capabilities to Liberians. How do we do that? We're thinking about some of that. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's not true just some regulation that's, and regulation is only good when you execute it. So let's take advantage of all of the opportunities that Liberians currently have under the law. Why is it that we don't see an increase in Liberian investment? Liberians in the United States, how do they pool capital to come to Liberia under this new pro-pro government? The doors are open to them. They're going to be giving all of the incentives. We want Liberians to pool capital in America who have strong credit ratings and come and invest in sectors. For example, in waste management, I have put the offer out there on the order of the president that let's get private firms to do our waste management as it is in Rwanda. Liberians can do this, but I'm waiting for the proposal. Let's get the proposal to see how we can make waste management sustainable in a private sector sense. There is a whole panoply of opportunities for Liberians. This government, this president, is committed to making sure Liberians are not bystanders or spectators in their own economy. We have the favorable policies. We're working with the framework. So what does it take to bring Liberian entrepreneurs together to support businesses? We want to do that.
Meanwhile, the economy is currently struggling, and it's something that you can avoid. Poverty, inflation, all of these kinds of things are, playing a major role in the economy right now. Is there anything that's happening right now to address these issues? Right now?
Oh, of course. I mean, there's a lot that has been happening in the macroeconomic space, the monetary and fiscal space, to address the volatility. So the most visible thing is the population sees is the decline in the Liberian dollar, okay? And that has a pass-through impact on prices because it makes, the goods and services more expensive. So that's a direct impact. So the government, through the Technical Economic Management team, has been stabilizing that. I mean, when we began the intervention, the president ordered 25 million infusion in the economy.
Has that happened?
Yes, we've spent around 15 million to date. 15 million. There were rumors that 25 million was spent. But again, if you listen to some of the newspapers online, you would be misled 98% of the time. So you need to listen to the real authorities. So we've been able to stabilize from 163. It was quite right. It was rising about 3 or 4 months ago, and then it came down to 152. It's been in the area. But here's the thing.
How has it been infused into the economy? How does it work?
Okay, so the way it normally works, the central bank has a normal auction process where they gave importers and people who are demanding foreign exchange US dollar, and those people surrender their Liberian dollar there. So this time, because of the rapid way in which the exchange rate was rising, we said no, we don't want to use the normal commercial process. And I saw one journalist online writing that this was a violation. I mean, if you're doing one thing the same way, you don't get the same result. You don't do the same thing. So the goal at that point of the president's mandate was to suck up Liberian dollars directly from the market, not to take Liberian dollars that are in the banks. The bankers and the commercial people have their money in the bank. So if we want to take 1 billion Liberian dollar from Looking Town or from Nuclear Town or from Mamba Point, you don't go to the bank account and take it from there. It's on paper. So you go to some Twe in Nukuta who has the money and who can sell his Liberian dollar to you. This was the direct mopping that happened. This was why the rate moved from 163 and it came down to 152. We're still continuing to do that up to the 15 million point yesterday. With the economic management team is considering what to do with the rest. Let's face this, there is no solution putting US dollar in the economy and taking Liberian dollar out of the economy is not a sustainable solution because we do not have the capacity at this present time to generate foreign exchange. It's just a stopgap, it's a temporary measure. There are other things that we are doing now to stabilize further. For example, as I stated in my overview in Ganta, the government is moving to working with export earners so that they keep some of the US dollar here. Okay, we're tinkering. There's a whole measure now we're taking up at the EMT to see how do we work. The CBL notes are coming out. They are competitively priced. This is another instrument that people can invest in to get Liberian dollar out. Look, let me say this. I don't think we fully understand. Okay, we don't today. We don't fully understand the complexity of the dual currency regime in an era of persistent macroeconomic shock. What we've had over the last 12 years, is some false stability because we had a lot of US dollar in the economy. When that US dollar evaporated, it has and when you don't have private sector taking off to fill the gap, our economy exposed tremendously. So we need to deep dive into understanding the optimal distribution of flows, fiscal side, monetary side of a dual currency regime. What are the optimal policy to minimize macro shocks? Just minimize, because you cannot prevent these shocks, particularly in a dual currency regime. These are the things that the EMT, the IMF is bringing in a lot of technical expertise. We're going to drive home on all of this so that in the next 6 months, the policy mix can be a little more optimal, can reduce the pressure on our ability to continue to mop up Liberian dollar from Liberian dollar from the economy. So,
as Minister of Finance, you have, I can say, close to 90% of government officials on your back, because everybody wants to make sure that they get their fair share of the budget as passed by the legislature. And so, does this heap a lot of pressure?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think too much about the transactional side of my job.
Okay.
Why so? And I think more of the economic growth side, the development side of the job more than the transactional side. So the job of the Ministry of Finance is to help make sure you have a viable economy. So you have to spend a lot of time talking about how do we get new monies in the economy, how do we get the optimal investment policy so that those monies, how do you, that kind of stuff, the macroeconomy, stability, those are the things. The pressures that have come in the past and are still coming are because of the way we structure the budget. So what we're doing now, I think most of the ministers are understanding that the budget is propos, that it's about road investment. The president wants us to do 85 kilometers of road, and we're going to finance that from. So we just released 4.5 million. 4.5 million to do community roads. That's 4.5 million not there to pay vendors. So the way that it's going to work going forward, and the cabinet is going to pass on this, is that we need to spend money when we are able to pay for it. So a balance between our cash management system and our procurement. What is happening now is that we are procuring, we are using goods and services when we don't know that the government to pay for it. So we're going to structure that as part of all of these technical missions that are coming, so that the government says we have $50, we can only procure $50 goods and services and let this go to those vendors or go and give the go-ahead. And when the goods and services are procured, we pay the vendors immediately. The vendors are being delayed because of the mismatch between the revenue that we're forecasting and the spending that we're doing. So again, this is part of the contribution that the president wants to bring to public financial management, so that when we do the next budget, we do a revenue forecast that is realistic. Meaning,
in an attempt to fight corruption, Minister, sometimes we've heard this word expediency, because we want this thing to happen fast, so we expedite the process to ensure that maybe development comes here, development comes there. Then we get a criticism of, they put in for the PBCC process, they did this, they do that. At what point do you draw the line between being expedient and following the actual processes?
I think we want to draw the line. We want to err on the side of expediency. I think in the next 5 years, we want to err on the side of expediency. Okay. I think the procurement process have been abused to some extent. Right. It is not true that just by following procurement, now I'm a fan of procurement. I want us to do the procurement, but not at the extent of the pace of delivery. So I'm a critic of a slow procurement process that does not deliver in time, because a delay in the development process is really destabilizing. When you don't do a road project on time, it has multiple consequences, because people stay in poverty, investment is slower. So I'd rather err on the side of finding ways to minimize corruption. It is not true that public tendering is a solution for corruption. We see with public tendering all over, corruption is still happening in the tendering process. So this myth that because we publicly procure, we have eliminated corruption. I am not a fan of that argument. I'm a fan of an argument that looks at an accelerated procurement process that has safeguards for minimizing corruption while accelerating. We can minimize corruption in procurement and accelerate procurement at the same time, so that, for example, we don't run into the same situation where we do the Mount Coffee Hydro, which has 88 megawatts, maybe 77 effective megawatts to go out, and don't have the transmission to send it out and have to wait 1 year before we get the power out. Those are long procurement cycles. So I think one of the things we're bringing under this new framework is how do we look at this new procurement law and adapt it to a more pro sense. Pro in the sense of the population can now wait for 5 years for a road that can be built in 3 years. That's the approach. So to that extent, I don't think the procurement process has served the country well in the past 12 years. Now, under this plan, what is the optimal procurement framework that we can use? This is what we're going to be delivering on in the implementation phase. I think some reforms in the procurement laws are necessary to make these to drive these points home.
Okay, now I see tons and tons of text messages. I'm inundated with them, but I also gave you out there to have a chance to interact with the minister. Please make sure that your questions are direct. Please don't try to do all of the political history and call for this, all of that. Let's go straight to the point.
Be efficient.
Let's save some time and go straight to the point. If you have a question, make it, ask it. If you have a comment, just go straight to the point. 0776 089713 0776 089713 0880 514 096 0880 514 096. Those are the numbers to join in the presentation this morning. Like I said, please be straight to the point and ask your questions appropriately, and then the minister will respond. Let me go to the lines now here from the first person. Good morning. Welcome, sir. What is your name?
My name is Michael Josh Potter, and I call you from Singa this morning.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let me say thank you this morning for explaining the proper agenda to the Nigerian people. But my question has to do with those loan agreements. Because up to present, we have not heard anything about the diplomat and the ETO loan. And then the various swap discussion that we had the last time the team traveled to China. I think we need to explain that part, because loan is very important in this development program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let me go back to the line and hear from the next person. Good morning. Good morning. If you drop off this line, to get back will be a serious challenge. Good morning. I'm fine, sir. What is your name?
Hello?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, my brother. Good morning. Good morning. What is your name? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the minister spoke well as regards to the full initiative or the full agenda. And as far as the minister said, something that is said, I was very clear that has to do with political will. Because the best way to transform this economy or to impact the life of the ordinary people is to have that kind of a political will. And because this minister is someone who's been on that road along with this president, who have worked terribly on that road of hardship, that road of honor money, other people, that road of volunteering the of Israel in the wisdom of this rainstorm and the president of the Republic of Nigeria, who I do believe me and respect on the basis of policy making and making significant insight as regards to history that I learned the way it is as a captain for this ship that we call the Tofu agenda. I'm very sure and optimistic that the impact of the level of urgency on the Tofu initiative will be met, because I do believe in the idea, the ideology, and the understanding of this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, sir. What is your name?
My name is Christopher Tobo, and I call from Cornwall.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, what I want the minister and others concerned to address is we don't have an extended social welfare program in our country. And what I'm observing is that when people work for government, serve very diligently, after a time, their time is over and they are set aside through a pension program. And if this is a real full system we are trying to put in place, I'm of the belief that, these workers must be prioritized, because the man is out of the system now. He has nothing to depend on. Government has no agency to refer him to. It is only that little pension thing he's going to rely on to sustain himself and his family. So I'm of the thinking that something must be worked up so as to, enhance the livelihood of these people. One, by paying them on time, and generally, if all of them are not able, generating some kind of arrangement where he can stay in his home, take a loan on what is there, and then will be a little shop for himself in his community to get himself moving. I mean, his pension, but not his able.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right, let's see whether we can get this person on the line. BG Play Yinswat. Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, go ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's take the next person. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. What is your name? Go ahead, Aaron.
Yes, my question is, when it comes to finance, to ask the Minister of Finance, implementation as my question is the way from Ghana to Zertu, from Buchanan to Riverside, from Barbara to Tottenham, from Montana to Riverside. Where are we now? Because we're trying to go, those are the main concerns with Ghana as well, doing.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Daniel. This is Warwick Bryce. Let me say a wonderful good morning to the minister.
Go ahead.
I listened to the minister, and Daniel, I have no doubt absolutely that I will listen to Big Brother Minister Dwayne. His articulation give a clever picture of what his vision is for the Ministry of Finance and how he intends to open our economy with the vision of the president. But I just like to squeeze into issues quickly. I think, I don't know, should I call it a recommendation?
Just go to the point, my man. Whether that recommendation, he will decipher that.
Please recommend.
Government just launched a very comprehensive document, the proposed agenda for development prosperity. I feel like I feel to you, Mr. Minister, that a administrative carrier be established at the Ministry of Finance, what we're talking about, to monitor, instead to do the effective monitoring of implementation of this agenda, and that the president, and appeal to the president, that the president will not leave any field of choice, no matter agreement, but not much being said, not much being done by the public relations department at your ministry. I would just think that your if you little bit robust, let me want to just provide us. The information that they go all over this place is that 25 million was pumped, 25 million was pumped. That you just reveal it to us. That today, just 15 million. So they need 10 million they are spending. So you see, so if the information is that department was a little bit effective in making sure in that they're not to always react to criticism, but put on some of the information that are much needed so that we can be able to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Owen.
This will have made you to win my support and you get my support as you do your job.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, let the minister address some of the concerns before they pile up so much. Also, please include government plans for national capacity development.
Okay, okay. Those are all wonderful questions. The question number one on Eton, EBOMAV, and mineral swap. Let's get this clear firstly. The president of His Excellency Dr. George Weah commits to building 800 kilometers of new roads before the termination of his first term. That is a commitment. Those roads require resources to be financed by either our development partners, the World Bank, AFDB, or by private financiers like Eton. There is no requirement that a particular person should do the road. What you saw early in the administration was an attempt to move very fast, knowing that sometimes our normal traditional processes could take long. And I will talk about how roads are financed normally in the normal space, which we were trying to obviate so that we are able to cut the procurement cycle time and then move to deliver a road that normally would be delivered 5 years to be delivered in 3 or 2.5. That was the essence and the logic behind EBOMAV and Eton. Where we are now, I can assure the public that we have credible pipeline of financing to complete the coastal corridor and major road segments before the president's term is over. Those roads, George Weah prides his re-election, his presidency on roads, and you can know that he will spare no effort to build those roads. Do not be gung-ho or specific that it must be Eton that must build the road. An agreement has conditional phrases in there. Say, if this thing does not materialize in this time, we will not go forward. If anything, for any reason...
But that means we're still on course.
We on course, we could be now on course. In other words, what is needed here for the public to understand is that the roads have to be financed so that we solve that problem. Not they have to be financed by a particular person. Mineral resource swap, what we also did in China was a memorandum of understanding, non-binding, no commitment. Okay, the government is not bound by that memorandum of understanding. It just says that the government will work with Chinese firms who are interested in exploiting resources in Liberia to see the opportunities that can pay for financing of road, that can pay for road investment. So we have iron ore, we have graphite, we have resources. When they do these feasibilities, then they say, oh, we believe we're not going to lose our money. We believe Liberia has a bankable project. We can work with the China African Bank, the China Exim Bank, and upfront do Liberia's roads. When those roads are finished, then we can exploit. While we're doing the roads, we can exploit the resources. But it's a feasibility that has to be. It's not an agreement, not a contract. So somebody has to assess that, oh, my man, I can only put this amount of money because it looks like I will only get that. So that's where we are with that. We're having technical discussions. But again, as we said when we did this, these things take time. Before I leave, I will link this question to this Ganta's Redru question.
Yeah.
Let me tell them, when you sign a contract with the AFDB or when the World Bank awards you, you have to procure. Okay, we have a line of credit right now from India Exim Bank. Okay, India Exim Bank. We have a 144 million financing to do some of the Southeastern Road in India Exim Bank. When we look at the matrix with the Public Works Minister the other day and the technicians, we put a timeline saying when will procurement end on that loan. You know the date for that? we put 1 year and some months because of all of the steps. So the public has to understand that the money is not in the bank, and the Minister of Finance can't go there with a bag and bring it when he travels. The contract applies. The Exim Bank will have its time. Maybe it normally takes 3 months to turn around. President Weah is promising to work with the Exim Bank so it can take not 3 months, but 2 months or 6 weeks. The experts say, Minister, it's not possible. You know, it's not possible. So by the time you do all of that turnaround, all the procurement, all the mobilization, before you see a yellow machine on the road, a good 10, 11 months have passed. This is how roads are built all over the world. What we are promising is to do it a little faster. Yeah. So we want to. So when you hear the criticism that we did not follow the procurement process, I want you to call and say the president was right for not promise following it because he wanted to do it fast. You don't be calling say the road not coming, then you call the same way and say the man you follow the procurement process. The two of them can't have it. If you're not following the procurement process, then it means you deliver road faster. If you follow all the rigidities, then so you have to accept that the procurement has cost. Now, I'm not preaching against procurement. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
We can reform procurement so that it moves faster, and we also do roads faster. That's part of the reform that the Pro-Poor agenda wants to deliver.
Yeah,
so I just want to clear that. And then I think there was a very good concern on the whole social welfare program. I think that caller was innovative. It's a brilliant point. Part of change is to look at what has been working and see what opportunities you can coax from that. And I think that's where he was going. We have our poor people who after work, we abandon them. We pay them that pittance, and what programs are there for them under this vision. So the Pro-Poor agenda has a goal of ensuring government resources are equitably distributed across the country. When we go to regulations, when we go to the technical aspect on the line items, this is where this corner's point comes in. Are we satisfied with the way we're running this? What opportunities can we leverage? Can we use some of the proceeds from the Social Security and flow back to some of the people who have paid in addition to what they earnestly work for? I can tell him that my team right now is taking this very point he has made and they're adding it to my matrix. I can tell him that, and we will follow on along with the president and the cabinet for a potential reform and see where this kind of program can fit. This is the kind of calls that we want when we come on the radio, because the caller can contribute to the discourse. The other one is, okay, the government is bringing investors. No question. We just say this economy cannot turn around without private investment. You rest assured, we are talking to investors. I spend a lot of time talking to investment people, and we're working on that. Effective monitoring, I think that was
there was a concern regarding
what was it? Is that Rory Bryan, right?
Rory Bryan, yeah.
Rory, to be honest with you, that's where we're going. I think monitoring evaluation has been weak. We just take it for granted. We need to raise it. Monitoring across government, monitoring all multilateral projects. This is all the conversation I have with the Ministry of Finance every day. Ministry of State wants to see how we monitor a program. We don't know what's happening. How can the government work more cohesively, more coordinated? That's the endless conversation we're having. We are placing this monitoring evaluation team under a new partnership framework with all of our multilateral and bilateral partners with the private sector. And as part of that monitoring, you can see what's happening at the Ministry of Finance today on the doing business side. We're going to monitor the doing business indicators. We're going to monitor road construction. We're going to monitor agricultural projects. We are commissioning a review with the World Bank and the African Development Bank of the way monies have been spent in agriculture over the past 12 years. And that review will inform a redesign of programs that are going on. The public relations part, I can tell you, to be honest, that's my weak part. I've been a minister. I want to focus on delivering for the people. So I think I've spent the last time about making myself look good or about telling people to say this about me. I have turned a blind eye to public relations because I think, for me, I'm fair. I think it's about what happens in the people's lives, not me telling.
But also about it's also, I mean, you can avoid the political side of it. People must know what you're doing.
Okay,
that's
so
why
I will take. Okay, I'll take worry point. We will do more. We'll do more with the. You know, we'll do more. We'll beef it up. People will do. I don't also want to. You know, there's ministry information. So the government.
I get that.
The government media program definitely will move to the next level. There are ways we can improve information management in the government, coordination and reporting, But what I can tell you we will not do, those journalists who believe that we have to work with them, there are journalists, there are certain papers here online that will continue to run negative headlines for the next 24 years of the CDC administration, and I can tell you, they let them prepare for that. We are prepared. For the media forces that want to promote what is real, to credibly report objective news, the gains that the government have made in the last 9 months, a president who has put 2,000 workers on the payroll, made tuition free, 1 million available in such record of time, cut salaries, all of this. I mean, if I
I'm sure you also have a thick skin for criticism.
But I love criticism, trust me.
Okay, let's go back to the line. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Your name, sir? Go ahead, Waka. Go ahead.
I just want to find out specific headphone in Chuma. I mean, I'm not very universally very clear in the minister. So, can you say to us, frankly, what is happening to headphone in Chuma? Is it off the table? Is it there now? But the other thing is that I really don't know how the how the church and this kind of strain, for them to is not work. Are you suggesting to us that you tend to, if you look at the completion of the peace agreement to the legislation or even part of funding of the peace because to say that the president is hopefully not following the law will amount to a violation of the peace process to the point of a fine in other policies. Are you now saying to us that the respectful sort of looking at the peace process and short public process and not following it, I mean, it can't be fine for our country. The last question to the minister is that you keep on talking about the development of Nigeria having new tariffs. I think so. What they just had the tariffs of around 297 dollars. So then we had three. I can also assume by the end of the fiscal year, it should be around 16 to 20 because the government is still employed. So I just want to get the point to say that very understanding is not too sweet. The national is
Okay, brother. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me take the next caller here. Good morning. Go ahead.
And let me say good morning to the Honorable Minister. Oh, look, Daniel, we need to be serious in this country. And what I just trying to tell the Minister of the government at home, you need to be focused. If you mind the agreement of the baboon, you will be the king. Liberian people not deserve. I want to start off.
At least.
Few hands that the people that now want to see the country to move forward, they are wrong. And we will not mind it. Because God will continue with all our need day and night with the prayer, and I know that God will answer this prayer. Because people now want to see the government succeed. See that now what happened, say the country will fall. And we see things happening in the shopping or that. You think that happen? They not happen. They will pretend to say they love this country. They will say, we are not against this government. Black and white. They want to see the government fail. And our God will not agree. And we know that you're doing the right thing. We will be with you people and we'll be in prayer with this government.
Okay, we get it now. Yeah. Focus is the key word, I know. Let me go back to the line and hear from the next caller on the line. Hello, good morning.
And how working minister on our summit tour. My name is Moano Enthusiasm from district number 6. And basically, let me comment and the honorable minister for interpreting the reality of the Kufu agenda to us. And I think today and to all opposition and those the factor was a free tutorial. And let me say this. And we think this agenda and this plan, it is in the interest of the Liberian people. And it is the first of its kind in my life I have seen an agenda that has not been a television that the previous administration that had the DRS a lot provision. It was television and we went there for the 12 years. It has not took that interest. But right now we are starting to
Thank you very much. Straight to the point. Good morning. Good morning. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to know whether or not the thing that you're talking about. How do you distribute it? Because when it comes to second bedroom distribution, this is a commercial thing. But if I get clearing that you know, you said you have went to the first community.
What? No, he didn't say that. Hey, man. No. But you, even say you provided that. The minister didn't say we went to community. I don't see that government. Go to community and VGI money. Good morning. That's the final caller. Good morning. Go ahead. Go ahead, Abu.
I must admit you are proven to be one of the passionate ministers that our country can boast of. I'm keen to know as to whether the policies that you're talking about that the government is keen to working on is that I can recall a few months ago our president gave a mandate to the central bank to do a monitoring as to how the foreign exchange can be implemented. Today, I changed money for 160, so I'm keen to know as to whether.
Get it ready again. 150?
160. He said 160. He said he changed money for 160. Final caller. Good morning.
Daniel, and good morning to excellent and brilliant minister in studio. My name is Ochuku Oboswa Ochuku. I honestly and let me appreciate this candidate and let me appreciate the originator of the program agenda. And we believe and we have a certain confidence that the transformation and the success of Liberia and Nigerians are about to enjoy their moderness under the stewardship of Ambassador Josh Malavia. All we can say to our people, let us stop the technicalism and be focused and provide our recommendation to national government. And help them can pay our taxes to amend the strength of the finance ministry to help them we can build our own, our hospitals and run our country to help them we can move our country forward. So, Minister, thank you and bravo, congratulations to our president and to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. You can address the remainder of the concerns before we wrap up.
Yes, let me address Mr. Dalibas. You see, that's one of the things about the politics now. You know, you say one thing, and then the opposition people take the thing that you didn't say and carry it out there. Nowhere did I ever say that we are violating the public procurement law. I did say we are going to take a new look at the law. That in the last 12 years, the law served as a constraint, a drag, and there's ample evidence for that. The way we did the hydro, our roads, those things. So as a result, all of the investments we made in the past 12 years have not materialized. Many of them are not materializing. All of our road investments. Maybe the time we took to do it, if we're doing shorter, maybe we will use those investments now to grow the economy. So we all need to take a look at the way the law is written so that it can allow for faster development. When I was at the board of the African Development Bank, I made the same request. Even the African Development Bank and the World Bank are making modifications to their procurement rule. We've argued that procurement should not be the drag on impacting maternal mortality, road infrastructure, or private sector. Nowhere am I saying President Weah is going to. The law does provide some shortcuts. To that extent, we're going to exploit those possibilities without violating the law. But we need to take a general, broad relook at the law. So let me not
Through
be
the legislature.
through the legislature. Yeah, through a new legislation. That's what I mean. So I don't want to be misconstrued, misunderstood there by the propagandist. You know. Here's the other point here. And somebody said provide some tutorial for the opposition. And this is an opportunity again. I said reduce salary. And the men say wage bill. Salary reduction is not equivalent to wage bill pile-up. Salary reduction pertains to the scale at which people are paid. One minister is making 6,000, another person is making 15,000 US dollars. So the gains we're talking about here is the reduction in the scale within government public servants. People were making 15,000, they're now making 7 or 6,000. All of those, when you aggregate those cuts, they amount to 6 million.
But at
The
same time,
wage bill, the wage. No, hold on. That's the point. So some of the reasons why we can add more people to the payroll is because we can take that 6 million and employ an additional group. Here's my point. I've told that to all of our partners. The wage is going to increase relative to what we met because the economy is not performing and government has the responsibility to provide support for citizens. So the theory of development under this government is that the wage goes up in the short term to absorb new workers, but keep it at some level, and then grow the economy, stabilize it, aim for lower wage bill over time as the private sector takes up. Do not confuse salary reduction description with wage bill. Those are two different concepts. Okay, one pertains to the wage as a proportion of the budget. The other one has to do with the skill. So you need to understand this thing. And particularly you went to Georgetown, where the country paid $150,000 for you. When you come to public policy discourse, you have to come with such. I have to say that because these are the people who are on Facebook misinforming the majority of people who are less, sophisticated, who don't know how to crack, and they're spreading rumors about the president, about lies, about the budget process. So I wanted to put him on that, and he exposed himself because now he sees it. So how is it now? How should the public take your view on reading the document when you can't even understand what the Minister of Finance is saying publicly? You read a document, how can you even understand that? The other point here is. I think the president's mandate. Look, the president's mandate, we are clear. The president mandated the Minister of Finance, the CBL, and the Minister of Commerce to work and stabilize the economy. This is what we did. Contrary to popular perception or some propagandist perception, we only authorized 15 million to date. This decision is not one person's decision. When a technical EMT meets, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of State, all the government people, the advisor, economic advisor, the governor, the Minister of Finance, Minister of Commerce, technicians are all gathered there to make decisions. What we do, we debate theoretically. The LRA people are there. We look at tax implication. We analyze all that stuff before we agree, okay, let's put 2 million out. Those group of people who are doing that are not the one dividing money. They are policy level people. Central bank has people who go and who have contacts with foreign exchange traders, with importers. There's a regular mechanism for exchanging money between the central bank and the general public and business community. The route central bank normally uses is through the accounting system, through the banking system. This time the EMT authorized them not to use that because the goal was to take Liberian dollar from the economy. As I speak, more than 2.5 billion Liberian dollars are sitting at the central bank sterilized. We're not putting it back because we want to give some value to the Liberian dollar. So they are keeping it there. The list of the people they sold the money to is available. The investigators who went there, they saw it. Nothing there happened with that money, nothing. When you talk to the people, they just lie. This country was just dragged through this process with nothing, and politicians want to score cheap points. So all of these things are there. No 25 million was ever authorized, has never been used. The 15 million, the Liberian dollar portion that came is sitting at the central bank. If you want to go do tourism there, we can have the central bank generate money where you go and see the power of Liberian dollar, take the picture and come back.
About whether Ethan and Ibomari is dead or is alive.
The question is, we are building roads. We are not beholden to contracts. We have a commitment to the Liberian people to do one thing, to build roads. Not one thing, but in a road sense, to build roads. When the roads are not available from Ganta to Zweju, and let me say, the Ganta-Zweju road is starting soon. All of the processes, the road front that was a hiccup, have now been resolved. So that Ganta-Zweju road, the next dry season, you're going to see movement on that. Okay? A lot of the other roads, the financing, we are lining them up. We are not gung-ho. We are not stuck to any one contract. Those contracts have default clauses in them and that could trigger a cancellation. All I'm interested in to tell the Liberian people is that the president will build their roads. When his term comes to go to the election, he will have to point to those roads. They will ask him, why you didn't build the road if you didn't build it? But God willing, I can tell you, they will not have to ask that question because the roads will be built over the next 5 years and beyond.
He's called Bulwidia. That's the name of the Minister of Finance. Minister, thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure having you.